Section 7 of Psychology, the Cognitive Powers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Ted Leinhart. Psychology, the Cognitive Powers by James McCosh. Section 14. Supplementary Notes. Note 1. As to what we primarily perceive. Physiologists are seeking to find out the organic processes involved in the exercises of the senses. Psychology should seek to determine what is the primary exercise of the conscious mind in sense perception. Certain German savants have been making diligent inquiry into the nature of the organic processes. Weber made some curious experiments as to the relative sensibility of different parts of the body, showing how much more sensitive the tip of the tongue is than the back. Lotz has been experimenting and speculating as to the origin of our notion of space, and discovers in each of the senses local signs which indicate the difference of an impression from others. According to my view, all these local signs are in the organism and are acknowledged to be movements there, and are, at the best, the mere prompters of the notion of space, and do not contain in themselves the notion of space or any other idea whatsoever. Fechner, in his Psychophysic, has sought to determine the relation of the exciting cause to the sensation, and thinks he has proven that the sensation is not directly as the excitation, but the sensation increases as the logarithm of the excitation. Delboeuf and Hering dispute the conformity of this law to facts. It is certain, I think, that the law is a physiological and not a psychological one, is a law of the organism and not of the conscious mind. Wundt regards external impressions as mere signs to be interpreted, and maintains that they are interpreted by unconscious reasoning, which is the primary element of all thought. This view places reasoning prior to the notion and the judgment, which is contrary to the almost universal opinions of philosophers, and is supported by no evidence except that of a hypothesis of unconscious mental operations, of which we have no proof. Helmholtz, who is a physicist rather than a metaphysician, divides the theories as to the origin of our ideas of space into nativist and empiricist. He opposes the nativist theory in the shape it takes in the philosophy of Kant, according to whom space is an a priori form in the mind imposed on objects. I do not believe in any such forms. According to the view expounded in this chapter, the conscious mind has a native capacity of perceiving matter as presented to it. All these German theories may be modified, if not set aside, if it be true, as Ferrier maintains, that each sense has an organ in the cerebrum, and that there is no perception unless the organic affection reaches the brain. Ferrier tells us that, on destruction of the angular gyrus, the loss of vision is complete and permanent. For the German theories, see La Psychologie Allemande Contemporaine, par Thomas Ribot, translated by J. M. Baldwin. The microscope has not yet been invented which is fitted to show us the working of perception or any intelligent act of the mind. In order to get information, we have now to employ not the senses, but the consciousness, and there is a difficulty in determining what is the first conscious act. We cannot look into the soul of the infant when it is in the womb, nor for a considerable time after. It cannot express any of its affections except pleasure or pain, say by a smile or a cry, and we do not remember our early experience. In mature life, it is found that the various physical and psychical acts are so mixed that it is difficult to separate them. Still, we can by self-consciousness look at our mental acts and observe what they are. We notice that in all of them there is a perception of an extended object within the organism or beyond it. Consciousness further testifies that in mature life we know matter as resisting our energy, certainly by the muscular sense, probably by all the senses, but neither of these can be had by reasoning or by development from a premise which does not contain them. They must therefore be given and not derived, intuitive and not acquired, premises and not a conclusion. Let physiology penetrate as far as it can into the secrets of the organism, say in sight, into the structure of the eye, of the optic nerve, and it may be of the angular gyrus in the brain. But let it modestly stop when it comes to something which cannot be seen or touched, which cannot be weighed or measured. At that point, let psychology take up the investigation and inquire what is the nature of perception, memory, reasoning, and other conscious acts. Physiology seems to declare that all that passes through the organism, through the nerves and brain, are vibrations. If it be asked, as has already been asked by Lotz, how can vibrations produce perceptions? I answer that the question of how, the blank of Aristotle, is often difficult to answer. That there are vibrations is certain. That there are conscious perceptions is also certain. To determine their precise relation is acknowledged by all to be a perplexing question. The answer to it is not made easier by bringing in a tertium quid of any kind. If this medium is of the nature of matter, the question follows how it can influence mind. If it is of the nature of the mind, how can it act on matter? If it is of the nature of neither, the unanswerable question is put, how can it operate both on mind and matter? While we cannot answer such questions, we can say that the conscious mind perceives matter as extended and solid. We may regard this as a native capacity of the cognitive mind until it is resolved into something simpler. The most satisfactory position is that the mind perceives matter, that by all the senses it perceives the organism, and that by two of the senses, sight and the muscular sense, it perceives objects affecting the organism. Let us assume that perception is one of the capacities of mind, and probably we are as near the truth as we can possibly be. In the mature mind, perception is a property of mind, just as certainly as gravity is a property of matter or assimilation of life. As it cannot be derived from anything else, from material action or vital action, we must regard it as original and primary. We may assume that in it we perceive things as they are. We perceive objects within or beyond our frame as extended and as affected. True, we do not perceive the vibrations, which we know only by the aid of science, but we perceive the affections produced by the vibrations. These affections are in space, and the mind perceives them as in space. Thus a muscular action, say the movement of the arm, is in space. The affections of the palate, the nostrils, the ear, are all perceived as in a certain direction and extended. They are perceived as affections, as affected, as resisting. We thus get at the first perception, and in all subsequent perceptions of body, extension, and resisting power, which we may regard as the primary and universal properties of bodies. Note 2. The foundation laid in physical nature for continued action, for development, and yet for permanence. Every bodily substance contains a certain capacity of energy. This is quite as certain as that it contains a certain amount of particles. This constitutes the basis of the conservation of energy, a doctrine which follows from the nature of body when properly apprehended. This energy is shown in one body acting on another by its properties. The force operates when the conditions implied in its nature are supplied. A stone must fall to the ground if unsupported. Hence the perpetual changes in nature so fondly dwelt on by Heraclitus and the blank blank. The forces in the agents which act as the causes are not lost. In all physical causation there are two or more agents in the cause. In the action there is a change in each of the agents. For example, both in the oxygen and hydrogen which combine to form water, but the substances, the oxygen and hydrogen, abide with their capacities. This is the blank of the Eleatics, which never changes. There is thus, on the one hand, a persistence of force, as Herbert Spencer calls it, and at the same time a succession of actions. This continuance with mutation is evidently under a divine order which takes the form of law. There is a sense in which all action is development, or evolution. The force comes out of the original energy in bodies. By their mutually adapted action, the forces often run in lines or races which are so arranged as to be periodical. They return according to their circuits, as for example the seasons do, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and the plant is after its kind. Section 15. On the education of the senses. The senses are all capable of being educated. Our tastes may be made more delicate and may keep us from using deleterious food. The sense of smell may be cultivated and add to our enjoyments, and odors, especially by means of flowers, may be provided to gratify it. Hearing may be improved and made more sensitive and accurate. Music is a source of pleasure, which may be enhanced till it becomes Elysian. Feeling may be made very delicate in its perceptions and capable of distinguishing very nice differences of object. The senses of pressure and of weight may be so trained as to give us very accurate measurements, but the eye is the most intellectual of all our sense organs, enabling us at a glance to take in the vast and the minute, the near and the distant. All these should be cultivated by training in the family and at school. Children should be taught from their earliest years to use their senses intelligently and habitually. They should be encouraged to observe carefully the objects around them and taught to describe and report them correctly. It has been said that there are more false facts than false theories, and this arises from persons not being trained to notice facts accurately, neither adding to them nor taking from them, nor gilding them by the fancy, nor detracting from them to serve an end. Pictures and models are used very extensively in modern education and serve a good purpose, as they call in the senses to minister to the intellect. But the things themselves are vastly more instructive than any representations can be. So children should be taught to use their senses, especially their ears and their eyes, in observing the objects around them and the events that occur, and storing them up for future reflection. Plants and animals and stars, men and women and children, fall under our eyes at all times, and their nature, shapes, and actings should be diligently scanned for practical use and for scientific attainment. Not, indeed, that every fact can be noted, for this would lay a burden on the mind which it cannot bear. Pains should be taken not to distract the mind by too great an accumulation of details, so as to prevent the rise and action of the reflective faculties. But the habit of careful observation should be acquired in early life, and facts stored up in all departments which we mean to study or to use in our future lives. Section 16. Knowledge given by the senses. Having looked at the senses individually, let us now weigh the results they yield when they are combined in their action. The knowledge of our bodily frame. This acts, I believe, as the starting point of all our knowledge of extra-organic objects, and furnishes a standard and a measure. Let us try to ascertain, in a general way, what this combined organic knowledge amounts to. By each of the senses we have a knowledge of parts of our frame as affected. Already, then, we have a knowledge concrete of things as in space. The part affected odorously is in one direction, the part affected by hearing in another direction, that affected by color in a third, and so with the other senses. Each sense localizes an organ, palate, nostrils, ear, eye, while touch proper gives a knowledge of the direction and locality of affections in every part of the body, and the muscular sense makes known the spot at which the energy is exerted. By combining this knowledge, we come to have a considerable and a familiar acquaintance with our bodily frame, with the parts and affections thereof. It is, after all, however, very loose and imperfect, till we are able to perceive the body, as it were, ab extra, till we touch and handle it and see the outside form of it. We know the shape of our bodies all the more distinctly from observing the figures of men and women around us. The peasant girl gains a large amount of interesting information when she sees her face and figure reflected in the water, or more perfectly in the mirror. When affected with a toothache, we know the general direction of the pain, but may not be able to tell in what tooth it is, as the same is known by the tongue or hand. It is certain that we cannot in this way know the form of the tooth. But when we have toothache, we try to find out, by touch or sight, the tooth in which the pain is. This may illustrate the way in which we combine the intimations given by the different senses. As a result of all the steps, intuitive, experiential, and inferential, we carry with us always, and wherever we go, a sense of our circumambient body and of its several parts, of its capable acts and susceptible affections, and round this, as a nucleus, we gather information, and all our knowledge of objects beyond our frame is referred to this as the center of our world. Our combined extra-organic knowledge. At the very same time that we know our bodily frame, we have a certain amount of knowledge of objects beyond it. We seem to take in a colored surface by the eye, and by the muscular sense we know objects as resisting our energy. Upon this foundation laid by nature, we may rear an immense superstructure. Acquainted with the structure of the sensory organs, the boy is able to fix the direction of objects affecting them, of objects seen and touched, of that face which he sees, of that voice which he hears, of that arm that holds him, and he is soon able to trace them all to one person, his nurse or his mother. Thus do we fix the qualities discerned by different senses in one object. We smell an apple, we see its color and outline. We take it into our hands and feel its shape. We press it and ascertain its hardness, and we hear the sound the crushing makes. Henceforth, the very smell or sight brings these qualities, or a number of them, before us, is associated with these qualities, and is conceived by us as possessing them. We expect everything that smells so, even when we do not see or touch it, to have a certain shape and consistency, and a certain taste in the mouth. We thus come to be surrounded by objects, with qualities attached to them in our apprehension. We distribute objects in the room, doors, tables, chairs, desks, books, pictures. We know the place, and so far the properties of every object under our view in nature, of the trees, the fields, the meadows, the rivers, the clouds, the sun, moon, and stars. We learn by degrees the purposes served by the things before us. That object is a chair, with a piece of dress lying on it. That other is a table, with food on it. That other a horse on which we may ride. As our observation and experience widen, our world enlarges. The known things in it become more numerous, and we know them more fully and accurately. In particular, we become acquainted with innumerable beings with like thoughts and sentiments as ourselves. We have at last not just a universe, but a cosmos with earth and air, plant and animal, with sun, moon, and stars, some of them at incalculable distances, and with innumerable living beings possessed of immortality. It should be noticed that all this knowledge radiates from our sensitive and conscious self. We place all these objects around us in a certain direction from ourselves, and we comprehend them from the way in which they would affect us. Section 17. Qualities of matter, extension and energy. Primary qualities. In all our sense perceptions, even those simply of our bodies, there are qualities known. Some of these are called primary. They are found in body, as Locke expresses it, in whatever state it be. They are so called also because, as Reid says, our senses give us a direct knowledge of them. I doubt much whether we are able to determine with clearness and certainty what these are. Physical science will not pretend to fix on them absolutely. Metaphysics has no right to settle such a question, but it may be safely said that there are two such qualities. One of these is extension, and the other is energy. Extension is certainly an essential quality. Every form of matter possesses it. The intelligent mind directly perceives body as extended. By an easy process of abstraction, we can separate the extension from the body as possessing other qualities and have the idea of extension or space. Hamilton evolves it from two Catholic conditions of matter, the occupying of space and being contained in space. Of these, the former affords a trinal extension explicated again into 1. Divisibility, 2. Size containing under it density of gravity, 3. Figure, and b. Ultimate incompressibility, while the latter gives a. Mobility and b. Situation. Energy under certain forms is also an essential quality. Matter is known as affecting us and as resisting our action. True, it is only by a gathered experience that we know what forms physical energy takes and find the nature, extent, and limits of the action, as for instance of gravitation and chemical affinity. But we seem in all our cognitions of body to know it as acting on us, even as we know ourselves as acting on it. There is no form or state of body, solid, liquid, or gaseous, which does not possess this power which is exercised in our perception of it. It should always be acknowledged that matter may possess other essential attributes, as these may be known to other intelligences who penetrate into the nature of things. But these seem to be the only essential qualities known to us. Organic affections, called not very happily the secondary qualities of matter. In regard to what secondary qualities are, such as smells, tastes, sounds, colors, there has been much controversy gendered of confusion, and many wrong inferences have been drawn. It is asked whether there is color in the rose, sound in the drum, odor in the violet, taste in the mutton. If we answer that there is, then it is shown conclusively that colors consist of vibrations, as do also sounds, and that tastes and smells are mere liquids and vapors affecting our palate and nostrils. But when we are driven to allow that there is no reality in these secondary qualities, it is argued that there may just be as little in the primary qualities, such as extension and resistance, which may be mere sensations of the organism or creations of the mind. The logical conclusion is idealism, such as that of Berkeley. The secondary qualities have an existence simply in our animated and sentient frame. Their office is to make known the state of our bodies. They do not reveal directly the properties of bodies beyond our organism, but they prompt us to inquire into the cause of the affections when we find them to consist of the mechanical or chemical properties of objects. It is thus that the sensation of heat or cold leads us to inquire into the state of the temperature, and that certain odors may send us out in search of malaria. There is an ambiguity in the phrases, sounds, tastes, colors, heat, and the like. They may mean simply affections of the sense, nerves, or the bodily qualities which produce the affection. Thus, heat may mean the frame under a certain sensation or a mode of motion. It is of importance that when we are using these phrases, we understand and explain what we mean by them. When we speak of feeling heat, we do not mean a mode of motion, which is in fact the cause of our feeling. It will be found that in all our organic affections, as indeed in all physical action, there is a dual or plural cause. There is an organic susceptibility and an extra-organic agent. There are tastes, smells, and colors, but these are called into action by sapid bodies, by odors, or vibrations. These two, the organic and extra-organic, are so mixed in our apprehensions that we are apt to identify them. That smell we know is produced by a rose, and we regard the smell as in the rose. We can thus so far understand the peculiar combined sensation and perception as to color which has so puzzled metaphysicians. By the eye we perceive a surface, but there is always associated with it a retinal color in the rods and cones. It is only by a process of abstraction that we can think of, we cannot image, the color apart from the shape. For philosophic purposes, the all-important distinction is between the qualities perceived immediately in all bodies. These are the primary qualities, and the organic affections implying, by inference, an extra-organic cause. These are called the secondary qualities. It is to be distinctly understood that there is a reality in both. The reality in the secondary qualities is merely in the affected organism, and we are justified in maintaining that there is such a thing. The reality in the other is in body, and we hold that this really exists. Section 18. Ideas given by the senses, externality, space, and energy. We shall discover as we advance that every one of the original mental powers gives us a special cognition or idea. We may notice here that sense perception gives us one externality. We perceive all material objects as out of and independent of the perceiving mind. This is associated with 2. Extension. We perceive things as extended by all the senses, not only as locked thought by sight and touch, but by smell, taste, and hearing. By all these we know our affected organism as in a certain direction and so in space. By taste and smell we know the palate and nostrils as affected, and by hearing our ear as affected. 3. We perceive body exercising energy. We do so especially by the muscular sense. We find body resisting our locomotive energy. Perhaps we have some vague sense of energy by all the senses. The objects perceived seem to affect us, but the sense of power is especially given by our energy and the resistance to our energy. And then we soon learn by experience that our organic sensations are produced by extra-organic causes, that our sensations of light and heat are produced by vibrations. We are thus made to feel that every body is possessed of power in exercise or ready to be exercised. These 3 primitive cognitions are the root of all our ideas regarding matter. As Kant would say, but in a different connection, they render experience possible. It is of importance thus to note and to specify what is the precise knowledge given by the senses that we may see clearly and ever keep it before us, that they do not and cannot yield us all our ideas, and that there are other and higher ideas as of self, of thinking, and moral good which must come from higher sources. End of section 7.